Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. In a couple of seconds, you are going to hear from experts on the Trump fraud case and exactly why Trump did not commit a crime. It was certainly not fraud. And again, Jon Stewart did not commit a crime, or I should say, Jon Stewart did not commit any fraud. He did not commit a crime, but he did something essentially very similar to what Trump did, which is legal. Tim Pool did amazing work on this. Actually, there was a whole story today regarding Tim Pool correctly looking at a tax assessment. So Jon Stewart paid a tax assessment that was less than what he sold a building for, or his apartment for. There you go. End of story. That's what Trump essentially did. And then the response is, well, no, Trump got a loan for it. Well, it's very likely that the individual or individuals who purchased a $17.5 million property that Jon Stewart sold, it's likely they took out a loan. So you could do the math on that. A loan was very likely involved in the $17.5 million sale, just based on how the real estate industry functions. Okay, so we're going to get to why, in a couple of seconds, we'll get to why Trump benefits immensely from this. Immensely from this. Hit subscribe to this channel. First, you have, and I'll tell you in 30 seconds before listening to former and future President Trump, the beautiful and talented and intelligent and awesome Alina Habba and others. Jon Stewart sells his pad for $17.5 million. Okay. If you scroll down, the article talks about he was once considered a tax delinquent. Okay. We don't know if that's true, but that's what the article says. Okay. This is the same man, Jon Stewart, who's going after Trump for not paying his fair share, and he was accused of being a delinquent himself. Okay. Then you have the New York Post story. Stewart benefited by 829%, by overvaluing his property 829%. But then you go back to Trump. Deutsche Bank officials say large changes to net worth like Trump isn't unusual. CNN. Then you get the New York Times. Trump's bankers say his exaggerated net worth did not affect loans. This New York Times article alone, along with the CNN article, completely dismantles Jon Stewart's argument against Trump, which, like Tim Pool correctly pointed out, is very similar to what Trump did. But we will get to all of this and more. Hit subscribe to read my writing in The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, and other publications. Go to hagoodman.com. This is a very, very interesting saga story. And it's moments like this, it's little events like this that will get Trump, thank God, into the White House in 2024. Hit subscribe. Now listen, if Jon Stewart or anyone accused Trump of fraud, they should listen to Alina Habba, okay? Because she's absolutely brilliant, and she explains everything right here to the press. This is a little while back.
Good evening. So let's talk about one thing that the press hasn't reported. We just listened to testimony from a man who has such distinct recognitions as an accounting expert that even Letitia James's team and the OAG's team used him themselves as an accounting expert. Professor Bartov was the New York Attorney General's expert in the Exxon case. Let's start there. But today, when he was on the other side, they spent the entire day objecting because he was giving testimony that didn't suit their claims. His testimony included that there was absolutely, and I quote, no fraud, that the statement of financial condition for President Trump was understated, that there was no evidence of concealment, and that in fact, President Trump's statements of financial condition had something that most other statements of financial condition don't have. 18 pages of descriptions and details about his properties, about his trophy assets, things that most people don't need to do and wouldn't do. The reason, because he had nothing to hide and he didn't conceal anything. This is not a publicly traded company. This is a private company. And the Attorney General is now sticking her nose into private companies. This is a very scary moment for our country. We have to have boundaries. We have to have laws. They were objecting every 5 minutes, and I really give credit today to the press that was in there. I did look at some of the feed, and it was accurate. There was absolutely no fraud. The statements were undervalued, and President Trump and the Trump Organization provided Deutsche Bank with everything they needed. Last week, we heard banks make clear that they thought they were a trophy client. They were the big whale that they wanted to get, and they valued their relationship. They said that holds true today. I don't know why we're here. I've said it before, and I say it again. Again, this case has absolutely no merit, and you don't have to believe me. A man that gives the Nobel Executive Committee recommendations on accounting and who should be recognized in accounting, that man that just sat in there for the entire day, made it very clear and had words with the AG and said, you should be ashamed of yourself. And I say it too. You should be ashamed of yourself. Thank you.
What will the former president be prepared to say at his own behalf?
I'm not going to speak about privileged information. At this time, the president is looking forward to taking the stand and once again making clear that he cooperated, he performed on his loans, they were paid ahead of schedule in some instances, always on time, and he was never in default. But somehow Miss James needs to fulfill her political promise, so we're here, and he'll be addressing all of that on Monday. Don't forget, though, he's going on Monday with the judge's gag order still in place, so he can't speak about certain things. He has to be so careful. That is so unconstitutional, in my opinion. We have First Amendment rights. We have rights as attorneys, Sixth Amendment rights, and those are all being violated. And he still wants to take the stand, even though my advice is at this point, you should never take the stand with a gag order. But he is so firmly against what is happening in this court and so firmly for the old America that we know, not this America, that he will take that stand on Monday.
What can we expect on Monday?
The same as we've heard. The same as we've heard from experts. He will clarify it. He will open himself up to whatever they want because he's not afraid. People that are afraid cower. President Trump doesn't cower. We'll be back on Monday with that, and tomorrow we'll hear more testimony from this incredibly intelligent man.
What was your client's reaction to the testimony today?
I think he made it clear. It's more frustration that we have wasted time, that they are doing election interference. This is a tactic that we've seen time and time again. This is not the first or last of it, and we're going to have to deal with it in all the other trials. But I really hope this is a lesson to those other AGs and DAs out there trying to make a name for themselves off of President Trump's back. If you're going to do it with garbage claims, it's going to come out because there are experts willing to put their heads out, willing to put their necks out, and willing to say that this is garbage. And we heard that today, the entire day, and we will hear that well into tomorrow. I don't speak about politics. I'm a lawyer.
But no, with all the cases that are stacked against him,
Yeah.
does he still feel confident about Monday, the outcome of this case and everything that's...
The outcome of this case was determined before we walked into court. Let's be clear. We're not walking into this court every day expecting that this judge is going to let us off. We already see what's happened in this court. This judge made his determination on summary judgment before we even walked in, before an expert took the stand. So let's not get it twisted. I'm not here fighting for that. I'm here fighting for America with him so that we can stop this. You know, that's the truth of it. And it's a very sad state of affairs. Today and many days we've asked for a directed verdict because there is no case. This case is garbage.
So, with all due respect to Jon Stewart, he should simply read this New York Times article and read the headline very slowly, because wonderful, morally superior, highly educated, snarky liberal Democrats, comedians, and we'll get to like Jon Stewart used to be amazing. Howard Stern used to be amazing. My God almighty, what happened? What happened to these people that I used to love? But anyway, you have Trump's bankers say his exaggerated net worth did not affect loans. You could simply also say that this could be viewed as an exaggerated dollar amount linked to Jon Stewart, possibly, if you just take the tax assessment. So Tim Pool, like I said, was amazing. He's always amazing. He's awesome. But he's correct. Jon Stewart did not commit a crime. Neither did Trump. The experts that Democrats love to cite, remember, you were not smart enough to do your own research? Remember that? But I guess Democrats have all become accountants now, just like they were everything else 4 years ago. But Trump's bankers say his exaggerated net worth did not affect loans. End of story. Then you had an accountant that actually advises on who should get the Nobel Prize in that field, that testified on behalf of Trump. So, again, then you have this article here where they say, oh, it's not, he says, well, it's, Jon Stewart says, not a victimless crime. Deutsche Bank wanted to give Trump money, and then it goes into, then he says something, he tries to go after Kevin O'Leary, which is a typical liberal Democrat type of, try to mock and denigrate somebody, but don't address their actual argument. Then he goes, money isn't infinite. So now we're getting a lecture on finance from Jon Stewart, who essentially did the same thing as Trump. If there was a loan involved, if somebody purchased Jon Stewart's $17+ million property and a loan was involved, how is it that different from Trump? Even if the person paid all cash, which would be bizarre. Even billionaires don't, do that. You still have the tax assessment valued the property at a much lower amount, which is exactly what happened with Mar-a-Lago. And none of the tax assessment and Trump's inflating whatever had nothing to do with his loans. They wanted to work with Trump. Then Jon Stewart says money isn't infinite. Okay, well then why? It's Democrats that are printed trillions essentially in fiscal and monetary stimulus because they shut down economic activity in their states because of you know what. And Jon Stewart was right on the origins of you know what. Stephen Colbert then said, oh, well, are you a Republican? I mean, this is the way the liberal mindset is. Jon Stewart, if he gets too close to the truth, then has to fly back to the wonderful, morally superior liberal realm of snarkiness and ignoring reality. But here, a loan that goes to a liar doesn't go to someone who's giving a more honest evaluation. This is complete nonsense from a very intelligent man, Jon Stewart. You think Deutsche Bank gave money to Trump, but not to a newly married couple who wanted a house? That division within that investment bank works with people like Trump. So another billionaire wasn't given loans. They gave $2 billion to Trump. Tomorrow, at any point in time, Trump can get hundreds of millions of dollars. You want to do business with Trump so the system becomes more incentivized for corruption? No, it doesn't. The only system that's incentivized for corruption is a political party that runs New York going after a political opponent. They literally impeached Trump because of the notion he asked if Biden was corrupt, which we all know now from the laptop. I mean, 50 intelligence officials, and this is another thing, like Jon Stewart, not long ago, didn't trust intel officials. Now, like I said, you have these people who were edgy, smart, intelligent, going up against the system 20, 30 years ago. They're now part of the system that they claim to be against. He was against Bush's intel officials, but he's now okay with 50 intel officials coming out of nowhere saying Hunter's laptop was a plot by the Kremlin because of obvious graft and bribery there. He's okay with Trump. They want to imprison Trump for hundreds of years. That's okay to Jon Stewart? This is good? This is like, we'll get to, I mean, he used to be so amazing and awesome, but it's like, you look at all these people, it's like, what happened? It's like, what happened to, you can go on forever, but here, this is Kevin O'Leary, and he's 100% right.
Kevin O'Leary back with us, O'Leary Ventures Chairman, Shark Tank investor. Kevin, you had mentioned, and it was a very profound kind of comment, that, some of these other businesses do have right to be concerned, whether they like Donald Trump or not. Maybe you can elaborate on that.
Well, this award, just leaving the whole Trump thing out of it and seeing what occurred here, and I'm no different than any other investor. I'm shocked at this. I can't even understand or fathom the decision at all. There's no rationale for it. And so let me give you a real-time experience I'm having regarding this, and I'm not the only one. It doesn't matter what the governor says. New York was already a loser state. Like California is a loser state. There are many loser states because of policy, high taxes, uncompetitive regulation. It was already on the top of the list of being a loser state. I would never invest in New York now, and I'm not the only person saying that. And here's a real-time situation. In development in real estate right now, the hottest asset class is very high-end data centers. They cost anywhere from $2.5 to $3.5 billion each. They're very expensive. They require low power. You need permits, but most of the major institutions in the world need more data centers, and that's why developers like me are doing this. Now, you need power. So New York has Niagara Falls. Normally, you'd consider that to put in one of these facilities, create 400 jobs, 5 more jobs for each of one of those for auxiliary services. I can't go to New York. So I'm going to Oklahoma, North Dakota, West Virginia. Governor Stitt, Kevin Stitt, my staff have met with him. Governor Bergen, the same thing. Governor Justice. Those are winner states. They don't do things like this. I have to syndicate that debt and all that equity. We're talking billions of dollars here. Do you think any foreign institution or any private equity firm or any pension fund would touch New York? No. And that's why New Yorkers should be concerned. The fine people of New York should ask themselves, why are we such a loser state? How are we going to attract business? It's not just the existing businesses that are fleeing out to Texas and Florida. What about new money like this that I'm talking about, like a $4 billion data center? Not a chance I would put that in New York. Zero probability. Never. And so they've got a lot of work to do to find themselves getting out of this situation. This has all occurred post-pandemic. Winner states versus loser states. Look at Tennessee right now, fastest growing city in America, Nashville. Winner state, good policy, competitive taxes. You've got to start thinking about this in the context of winners and losers. New York, mega loser state.
So, Kevin, what did you think of Governor Hochul saying this is like a unique one and done because Donald Trump went too far and was so nefarious? You guys, if you're just doing what you should be doing, you have nothing to worry about. But they're very worried about it.
Yeah, we're very worried. Every investor is worried because where is the victim? Who lost money? This is some arbitrary decision a judge made. This policy and what this says, what does this say about the bar, the legal bar? in New York, aren't they going to question this judge? What is this? $355 million, and there's dollars as a penalty, and there's plus interest at 9%, and there's no victim? I mean, I'm sorry, her words fall on deaf ears to everybody. There's nothing she can say to justify this decision. And this has nothing to do with Trump. Nothing to do with Trump.
It was not only a victimless crime, because so Jon Stewart said money isn't infinite as he votes Democrat, and Democrats have added trillions to the debt and deficit, but money isn't infinite as Democratic governors shut down state economies, and then just coincidentally things opened up when a Democrat was in office. There's a choice to shut down state economies, but money isn't infinite, and print money to replicate economic activity. And then AOC and others say, oh, eviction moratorium. Yep, didn't let anyone work. So you're now the good guys because you're saying eviction moratorium. You wouldn't let anyone work to pay their rent. And so money isn't infinite. A loan that goes to a liar doesn't go to someone who's giving a more honest evaluation. Is Jon Stewart, like, what planet is he on? This is about Deutsche Bank and Trump. Trump owns real estate, resorts, casinos, historic buildings. What are you trying to say? That is Jon Stewart trying to say that a couple who just got married, or a loan that was going to go to like some kind of charity, instead went to Trump? What is he talking about here? This is the problem. They're so desperate to stop Trump that now a greater spotlight is being put on these types of injustices. You have crimes like never before in New York, LA, other places. Like, you have people being, that poor police officer who lost his life, God bless his family. And you have people getting pushed into. I mean, it's like unbelievable. And this is happening in the subway. And they're going after Trump. There's like complete lawlessness at these major cities, and that Trump is the problem because he actually made Deutsche Bank money. This is another thing I don't get. Does Jon Stewart not understand? I mean, he's intelligent. He knows real estate. He sold his property, rightfully so. Again, he's trying to say, and then he's trying to say that, well, he didn't get a loan for it, but someone else got a loan to purchase the property. Likely. We don't know for sure, but likely. So the system becomes more incentivized for corruption. He's just making things up. The system regarding Deutsche Bank and Trump literally stated his bankers say his exaggerated net worth did not affect loans. They appraise and assess and evaluate everything before they give any billionaire a loan. It is a completely victimless crime. And going into some kind of pseudo philosophy about, finance and money and liars, it's complete nonsense. The system is actually, in a way, the system benefits from Trump getting loans, because then you get more people employed, then you get more taxes, which is what Democrats love more than anything else. Trump has generated more tax revenue than every Democrat then let's put it this way. You could take every president in the history of this country, and Trump has generated more tax revenue than all of them combined. Okay? I mean, it's just like, we know what's going on. There is no victim here. The bankers literally stated they wanted to do money with Trump, and they made money with Trump. But still, he has to pay. He had to pay a $400+ million fine. But if you listen to Alina Habba again, this is Alina Habba. she'll break it down again.
I'm not here to hear what he has to say. That was what rang true, loud, and could not have been more honest, coming from the judge who was already predetermined.
By the way, she's talking about the judge already stating that Trump committed fraud without any evidence whatsoever. So the judge stated that Trump committed fraud, and then they said, well, he gave fraudulent documents to banks that literally made money and wanted to do business with him. I mean, they're so desperate to get Trump. And it's like, the more that Jon Stewart and others try to rationalize this, the more people really, he's also amazing. Tim Pool is fantastic. The more that Tim Pool and others, myself included, not as big as his channel, but my channel is growing. You can look. Nobody lost money. And then he goes to the system. He sold his. The whole point is what Tim Pool was saying, which is correct. Jon Stewart allegedly, let's just use that, sold his property for a much higher valuation than the tax assessment, which is exactly what they're going after Trump for. But then they say Trump got loans. The banks wanted to give him loans. The banks made money. The New York Times, the CNN, and others stated that the banks literally testified on his behalf. The victims literally testified for the defense. The alleged victims. The banks that made money. Then, like I said, Jon Stewart talks about the system. You couldn't find a more corrupt system than, the DNC. Jon Stewart's a great liberal, wonderful liberal. Does he think that Democrats cheated Bernie Sanders in 2016? They can't even run a functioning primary. We're going to be lectured about a system. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post. I was the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. So, and incidentally, I don't think nobody would ever remember this, but I wrote an article in The Hill years back defending Jon Stewart on a foreign policy topic that I think completely differently about now. But anyway, the point, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. If you listen to Alina Habba, the judge did not even want to hear any exculpatory evidence.
That my client committed fraud before we even walked into this courtroom. I'm not here to hear what he has to say. Then why exactly am I being paid as an attorney, and why exactly are taxpayer dollars being used in this courtroom? The answer is very clear. Because Miss James wants to stand right here like she did this morning and call my client a liar, call the company fraudulent, and make a name for herself. She said this morning that the numbers don't lie and they won't lie in this case. Well, Miss James, I have a message for you. The numbers didn't lie when you ran for governor, and that's why you dropped out. And the numbers don't lie when President Trump runs for office in 2024. And those numbers are loud and clear. This country is falling apart. And if we don't stop corruption in courtrooms where attorneys are gagged, where attorneys are not allowed to say what they need to say to protect their clients' interests, it doesn't matter what your politics are. Everyone has a right in this country to get up and put a defense. I don't care who you are. You have a right to hire a lawyer who can put objections on the record. You have a right to hire a lawyer who can stand up and say something when they see something wrong. But I was told to sit down today. I was yelled at And I've had a judge who is unhinged slamming a table. Let me be very clear. I don't tolerate that in my life. I'm not going to tolerate it here.
And she's a remarkable woman. It's like Democrats, they think that the world doesn't see what's going on. They want retribution. They want to ruin and destroy Trump. And they will do it at all costs, legally. And they're going through the legal system while at the same time protecting Hunter's laptop, for example, with literally the New York Post, Daily Mail, and others. There are emails where Hunter is asked for influence. Literally, how can you use your influence on behalf of the company? Trump would never have been impeached had we known about Hunter's laptop. He would never have been impeached. That's why 50 intel officials came out of nowhere. I mean, it's like, we'll get to Jon Stewart and Howard Stern and Stephen King. Where did all these people come from? Like, all of these, like, wonderful people from your youth suddenly just become part of the very system. Okay, if you oppose Trump in this manner, you are part of the system you claim to stand up against. The machine, the system, whatever you want to call it, that's going after Trump. And everyone sees it. That's why he's up in the polls. Jon Stewart should ask why Trump is up in the polls, even in swing states. Even in Minnesota, he's doing well. Like 3 points down, something like that. But Alina Habba is 100% right. Let's continue. I mean, they want the vitriol and venom towards Trump. It's on display legally. That's why you have Democrats literally running on imprisoning Trump. See, when Trump said lock up you-know-who, the Federal Bureau of Investigation stated there was evidence of crimes, but we're not going to indict. They went above and beyond. There were servers with top secret intel. You think if Trump had servers? They're trying to imprison him for literally making money for banks. Could you imagine what they would do if he had top secret intelligence on computer servers? And he was president with the power to declassify. And Biden had classified data in like 5 or 6 different locations. Could you imagine if Trump had classified data in 5 or 6 different locations and they said, well, Trump's memory is bad, so we're not going to indict him?
And you know what? You shouldn't either. Because not every American citizen gets a camera and a microphone. And what I'm seeing is such a demise of American judicial system and democracy. Miss James came out this morning and said that she knew Mr. Trump. And she always calls him Mr. Trump because it kills her that he was the president. But the 45th president of this country, one of the best presidents we've had, has built a great company. It's worth a ton more than that statement of financial condition. And she doesn't know how to get out of it because her politics won't allow her. She calls him a bully. She says he's going to bring out racial slurs. He's going to say things today and taunt her. Well, Miss James, you taunted him. Before you came into office, before you saw one record, one statement of financial condition, you taunted him. You said his administration was too male and too pale. Those are her words. She said that she and Michael Cohen were going to be his biggest nightmare. Well, I have some news for you, Miss James. Michael Cohen folded, lied, and crumbled. Your star witness, along with all the DAs and corrupt AGs, need to be paying attention to what happens when you let us take the stand. When you let my client speak the truth. And the judge can tell me to sit down. And he can try and shorten my client's testimony, but it is loud and clear. They've got nothing. They've got nothing but their politics. She's got nothing but her Soros backing, which we discovered recently. And I am sick and tired of seeing it. Pay attention, America.
So, Deutsche Bank officials say, just read this. I mean, anyone who says that Trump committed fraud, CNN, Deutsche Bank officials say large changes to net worth like Trump isn't unusual. Then, Trump's bankers say his exaggerated net worth did not affect loans. The testimony of witnesses from Deutsche Bank lent support to a central plank of former President Donald Trump's defense. They literally defended Trump. I mean, how stupid, how indoctrinated do you have to be to ignore the testimony of the alleged victims for the defense? How many times, if this is a crime with victims, how many times does the victim actually testify for the defense? How about never? How about never? And then he goes on, like this tirade. Jon Stewart goes on this tirade. Oh, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and grab people and do this and that. It's like, well, you know what? Trump didn't do any of those things. Here. So then he gets very upset. Typical wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrat. OMG! I've been caught doing something not even remotely to Trump. And then he goes on and says, there's a word there. So, great. He goes on and says, OMG, I've been caught doing something not remotely similar. Yes, it's remotely similar. You sold property for a much higher, infinitely, 829% higher amount than the tax assessment, which is not fraud. You didn't ask for a loan. You didn't work with banks. Trump did. That's true. But but somebody else might have gotten a loan based on, you might have gotten a loan for the dollar amount, the ultimate dollar amount that you sold the property for. But that's another story. That possibly, I guess all I need to do is start a fraud college. Like, okay, the Clinton Foundation, you want to go and whataboutism? There's a lot more. They've been accused, the Clinton Foundation, of stealing billions from Haiti. Okay. Then you have the Uranium One deal. Then you have, that's a New York Times broke that story. Then you have weapons deals. Then you have a whole bunch. Then you have, I'm going to talk about tax issues, the campaign emails, or the Clinton, there's so many different emails talked about a whole bunch of corrupt practices going, financial practices, financial. And then he still classified docs. Like, Clinton had servers with top secret intel, Mr. Stewart. Maybe Jon Stewart knows how the top secret intel was actually transferred onto computer servers and cell phones. Maybe Jon Stewart knows how much classified data is in different locations linked to Biden when he didn't have the power to declassify. Bankrupt casinos? Yeah, he has casinos and they're not bankrupt. He's still worth $3.2 billion. Okay, his net worth keeps going up. They have to convince themselves, the wonderful morally superior, that Trump is like penniless. Pay hush money. Okay, that was legal also. The hush money issue, he didn't even pay it. Michael Cohen paid it. Okay, he never was criminally charged for anything. Not that any Democrat cares. Discriminate, that was an issue. That could have been an issue with one of his companies, but he never stated that he himself, it was like 14,000 units. Numerous companies in 1973 were part of that DOJ investigation, or, part of the whole DOJ thing. And it's not like he is literally meeting with people. So you have no proof, and he denied any wrongdoing, but whatever. That's, okay, cheat at golf and foment a rebellion. Okay, literally none of these things happened. The housing issue could have taken place, But again, it was like 14,000 units. Trump was not on the ground floor doing any of the day-to-day work. So Trump did not steal classified data. It wasn't really a fraud college, but whatever. You want to talk about fraud, the Clinton Foundation. You want to talk about Hunter's laptop. Yeah, go after Trump's college, and then all of these issues ignore. Like the good, morally superior liberal comedian. Steal classified documents? No, that didn't happen. Bankrupt casinos? Okay, so that is a distortion of the truth. He's a billionaire because his casinos and resorts work out and people go to them. Pay hush money. Michael Cohen actually paid the hush money. Foment a rebellion. Literally none of these things happened. Somebody should also tell Jon Stewart that it was a 12-0 unanimous Supreme Court victory. Unanimous Supreme Court victory for Trump because he didn't foment a rebellion. So, anyway. Greg Jarrett is amazing. There's also another amazing person here. Everybody here is amazing that you're watching.
Let's bring in our panel, Greg Jarrett, Fox News legal analyst, and Pam Bondi, former Florida Attorney General, also co-chair of the America First Policy Institute Center for Law and Justice. I think we got to begin with law and justice, Pam. Did we get that today?
Of course we didn't, Charles. This is unprecedented. New York has never brought a case like this ever in the history of New York that anyone can find.
That's also the thing that, like, Jon Stewart will elect Trump. Thank God. We had record low poverty with Trump. We had record highs in household median income. This is a fact in 2019. Okay. And Jon Stewart was right about the origins of you-know-what, and of course, he was shamed by Stephen Colbert, so he went back into the echo chamber. But they've never prosecuted anyone for any of these things. And then they say, well, Trump is unique. No, you could have, but you chose not to. Because you didn't have the venom and vitriol, you didn't have the intent to knock out a political opponent like Trump. They're doing this because Trump is up in the polls, and they're going after the direct political rivals, which is why they impeached him for a phone call. Trump was impeached for a phone call where he asked if people could look into Biden's criminality. That's it. Then they got the money. They got the funding. Trump is now indicted 91 criminal charges for hundreds of years in prison, but this is the rule of law. Okay? They impeached Trump for daring to ask if Biden is criminal. And then when they get Democrats throughout the country, special counsel, just going after Trump, and they're going to get a huge immunity victory. Even a partial immunity victory will be immense, huge victory for Trump. Hit subscribe, by the way, if you're new to this channel.
Yet they go after Donald Trump when crime in New York is at an all-time high. Letitia James should be out there fighting crime, and instead she went after Donald Trump and his family.
Greg, I mean, listen, as a lay person, first and foremost, the judge had already determined the verdict before the trial, so-called trial, and I guess the testimony, we do have a 92-page ruling, was to determine the outcome or the number that we got today. Again, looking at it from the outside in, it feels pretty awkward. I couldn't follow it day by day, but the notion that Deutsche Bank had the wool pulled over their eyes and some of the most sophisticated banks out there were somehow fooled by President Trump, former President Trump, it just seems far-fetched.
Oh, it is. I mean, I think this case, Charles, you're right, was always legally unsound. Letitia James ran on the campaign promise to get Trump before she had access to files or evidence. And
could you imagine if Trump had indicted Hillary Clinton after saying, lock lockup. Could you imagine the indignation? Could you imagine Jon Stewart saying Trump ran on this platform? Again, I used to love, Jon Stewart, Howard Stern. Howard Stern used to be at the forefront of the First Amendment, and you couldn't find a more talented, hilarious, abrasive, somebody who pushed the envelope. My God, the things. And now Howard Stern is like not only a shell of his former self, but he's like this elder statesman in a world where if even one of his radio shows were listened to by today's wonderful, morally superior liberal Democrats, they wouldn't, in 2 seconds, they would want to cancel. And Jon Stewart 20 years ago against the Bush administration, I think George W. Bush and Biden are the two worst presidents of all time. I'm voting Trump. Record low poverty, record highs in household median income. We had a great foreign policy with Trump. And we can go on and on. First president to step foot in North Korea. Could you imagine if Clinton was the first female president in North Korea? They would say, oh my God, this is amazing. With Trump, they just ignore it. Doha Agreement got us out of the longest running counterinsurgency conflict, the longest running military conflict we've ever had. And the pullout was atrocious. It was a May 1st, 2021 withdrawal that Biden ignored because he didn't want that. Democrats are now the most militant political party. And what's happening across this country, it's really unbelievable. More people have lost their lives entering this country than at any point with Trump, yet nobody on the left cares. Because it's not about value system, it's about political power and feeling snarky and hip and cool. But then, Jon Stewart's, he's had a great career, but he used to go after old school Republicans. Going after Trump, you're not doing the same thing with, Trump and George W. Bush are oil and water. They're Trump is the antithesis of Bush. So when you try to be snarky and go after Trump, it's like, well, you know what? There's all of media have given their souls to trying to take down Trump. You're not doing anything novel. And then it's like, okay, now you're rich also. Okay, God bless him. God bless Jon Stewart. He deserves all the money. He's a great comedian. But, you're rich also. So you sold your property for, 17.5 and the tax assessment was a lot lower. And then your rebuttal is, well, you didn't take out a loan. Okay. Did somebody else take out a loan to buy the property? Who knows? That could be part of the equation. And then Deutsche Bank made money, literally testified on Trump's behalf, but the system, money is finite. We're getting a treatise, a lecture on, the philosophy of wealth and finance and money from Jon Stewart. They're going above and beyond, and everybody sees they're trying so desperately. And they'll probably convict Trump of the hush money issue, which is going to be overturned eventually, just like the ban with Trump in Colorado was overturned by the Supreme Court.
And then when she took office and found no wrongdoing, what did she do? She dusts off this oddball consumer protection statute, contorts the facts, and suddenly claims fraud, even though at trial it was shown that nobody was defrauded and no consumers were harmed. In fact, the lending banks were more than happy to give Trump the money. They made enormous profits. Trump isn't the one who inflated the value of assets. No, he hired what business people do, outside real estate experts, respected accountants, top lawyers. They arrived at independent estimates, and the banks, they did their own due diligence. What did they find? That Trump had more than enough to secure the loans. So this judgment also completely undermines established common law, which requires proof of intent to deceive. There was none. And Gore on the judge and the attorney general simply tossed that out the window. And they also violated the Constitution, penalizing incorrect commercial speech, which the First Amendment protects. You know, I think the bias of Judge Ngorong was on full display every day: arrogant, smug, hostile, self-righteous, and I think he was obtuse.
So, ladies and gentlemen, Jon Stewart's response, and like I said, he used to be like amazing, and now he's just part of the same system, part of the same. Okay, I used to be a lifelong liberal. When they cheated Bernie Sanders, when the Democrats actually conspired against Bernie Sanders, and Bernie Sanders did nothing to even fight back. I mean, just, it's like they essentially broke. Maybe he was always like that, but it's like the image of somebody that you thought was somebody who would go up against a system. Trump, we had record low poverty. Trump goes up against a very, very peculiar, let's say, system. The same system that Jon Stewart used to go up against. But see, again, Jon Stewart only goes up against the system if the system is run by Republicans. If the system is run by Democrats, he ignores it and then tries to find some way to go after Trump. And then he goes on this diatribe here on Twitter. I do not have Twitter. I do not have Facebook. I only have this channel and the stock market crash and Bitcoin crash channels. And hit subscribe if you're new. I've been caught doing something not remotely. Yes, it's definitely remotely close. He literally sold a property for much higher than the tax assessment, which is what they accuse Trump of doing. Then they contort themselves even further and say, well, Trump got loans. And it's like, yeah, and they gave him the loans because they made money. And they literally defended Trump in court. So hit subscribe to this channel, ladies and gentlemen. By the way, to my super chat, thank you so much. Paradox, thank you. Play to win, I didn't see you, thank you so much. Pony Soldier, thank you so much. All I can tell you, ladies and gentlemen, is the following. Jon Stewart is going to help Trump get elected. And like I say, more power to him. And it's like, more power to him. That's all I can say. God bless Jon Stewart for helping everyone voting for Trump. And I say this with all due respect, because you're not doing Democrats any favors when you are a super wealthy comedian trying to lecture about morality. Hit subscribe to this channel, ladies and gentlemen. Like I said in the beginning, Jon Stewart did not commit a crime, but neither did Trump. And Democrats are just trying to knock him out of 24. It's so obvious. Hit subscribe to this channel. I'll be back tomorrow. Thanks, everybody.